Coming to you live with the insight you need from the financials and political capitals of the world to the heart of innovation. This is Opportunities to Consider with your host, author, speaker, and corporate strategist, Hunter Gaylor.
Welcome everyone to another edition of Markets Hunter. We are coming to you live here right across all platforms. And you know what? We've got a really great guest today. You've seen him on, you've seen me interview him on the NASDAQ. Robert Liscouski is the CEO of Quantum Computing, Inc. We've talked a lot about the market in quantum computing. You've probably been subscribing to our Quantum Minute newsletter on LinkedIn, where we've been sharing a lot of industry updates that have been going on with regards to quantum computing and what's going on, where it's going. So make sure you like and subscribe and follow us for real cocktail conversations, coffee conversations, where we sit down with the leaders of companies and we have in-depth conversations. These aren't just, little talking points. We get down into the weeds and we talk about the industry, what it means for the industry, what it means for various industries. And we're very excited to be able to bring this type of coverage that you don't get anywhere else. This is the only place where you get this type of long format coverage, where we sit down and really get a good understanding of where companies are, where they started, where they're at, and really most importantly, where they're going. What's that 3-year, 5-year goal of that company? We're not day traders here. A lot of our people that do follow us are in that day trading community, and we applaud you. We like getting these companies out in front of you. But really the purpose of what Market Hunters is to bring you lots of opportunities and real information of what's going on in the industry. So without further ado, I'd like to bring in a very close colleague of mine and the CEO of Quantum Computing, Robert Liscouski. Robert, thank you for joining us today on the Markets Hunter platform.
Hey, Hunter, it's good to be back with you.
It's great to have you here. So, Bob, we've talked a lot about, a lot of the innovations that QUBT is currently doing. And, as of this morning, we're seeing, actually, if we go back to last week, we saw a lot of stuff that was happening in the marketplace because of SVB. And so a lot of people that are, constantly looking at stocks, they're, up and down, they're seeing a lot of red on the screen. Well, the good thing is while we're having this conversation, you're green today. So that's good.
It's always a good thing.
It's always a good thing. But more importantly about the stock and where you're at for the Market Hunters community is we look at the fundamentals of the company. We look at the revenues of the company. We look at the different things that companies are doing. And I want to talk about your company because you've got so many things going on that's exciting that you're not just a computing company. And I want to start there, right? Talk to us a little bit about your view of the company. Tell us who QUBT is, who is Quantum from the eyes of the leader.
Yeah, so thanks for that. And I think, your characterization of not just being a computing company, I think is really important because we've evolved over the past few years now. We've been doing this since 2018. And as you might recall, we started off as a software company that was looking to connect end users with quantum computers. And we did that. We had a platform called Catalyst, and we had connections through AWS, Amazon Web Services bracket, into a Rigetti and an IonQ and a D-Wave. We were able to do some other machines outside of bracket. And we were hoping that we'd be able to develop a business purely around connecting end users with quantum computers and doing all the hard work in between. So the platform did all that heavy lifting. The challenge was the quantum computers that were available to us didn't really do the calculations, and it didn't fulfill the promise yet that people were hoping for. So, our business, while we were successful at the platform, generating revenue from computers that weren't really able to provide real solutions was a challenge for us. So in 2021, we embarked on an effort to do an acquisition of a hardware company, really a very nascent IP company that had a foothold in quantum photonics and looking at photonic applications in quantum world and being able to develop a quantum computer around photonics. So we really like that idea. And we actually made the acquisition, culminated that last year or last June, and have been off to the races with really true quantum computing using photonics. It's changed the profile of the company completely, but more importantly, it's going along with the very mission that we started off with. It's bringing quantum computing to people in an everyday capacity. I could talk more about that, but that's really where we are today, and it's really been a tremendous evolution in a very, very short period of time.
Well, and I think that's a great segue into my next question. Obviously, we've talked before. I've interviewed you on the floor of the NASDAQ, and we've talked high level of a lot of the different kind of industry verticals that quantum is currently pursuing. But I want to talk a little bit about the move to revenue. As a company, you are signing contracts. We see it in the news. You're being awarded contracts just recently, the NASA contract, which we'll get into. But talk to us a little bit from the fundamental side of running the business.
Sure.
Where are you at from a move to revenue perspective?
So it goes back to the evolution of the company into the photonic quantum computing space. So let me just give you a little bit of history about at least from our perspective. I'm not trying to speak authoritarian here, but the industry starts off with a number of different approaches to quantum computing. And the dominant one is superconducting computing. That's what IBM is doing. It's what Rigetti is doing. They require cryogenic environments where you have to have absolute zero or virtually zero interference with the atoms because they're very unstable. And to do any kind of calculations, those atoms have to be stable. You need a lot of them. The measure of computational capability in a quantum world is called a qubit. It's built on this concept of a 1 and a 0 and the superpositioning capability of a 1 and a 0 at the same time. So all those things have to be in play, and they really limit the amount of capability you have in terms of doing computations. So in using the IBM example, they have arguably several hundred qubits that they advertise. But when you get to the error correction numbers of qubits that you really need, you're down to really maybe 10, 20 qubits. It's really not a lot, right? And you need several thousand, if not arguably hundreds of thousands of qubits to actually really do meaningful computations. So that's a constrained world, but that's the path that they're on. Moving into the photonic space, we do things at room temperature. Because we use light, photons, they naturally occur. As a consequence, in the environment, they naturally occur. And physics is, this quantum world is all around us. Well, light allows us to be able to do the calculations in a way that they're inherently coherent. So the atoms are stable. We have the ability to use the environment around us to create that stability, which effectively is becomes entropy for us, which is the power behind a quantum computer. And we can do calculations today in the tens of thousands of qubits, non-error, which are all error corrected. They don't need, it's a misnomer, I apologize. They don't have to be error corrected. And we can actually do really complex problem solutions today, right?
So Bob, not to interrupt, but can you walk that through perhaps for the person that is not the mathematician? When you say it doesn't have to be error corrected, what does that mean kind of in a very, very basic example for our listeners?
I appreciate that. So, when we talk about the superconducting computers, like I said, those atoms have to be very stable. Right. And you need some ratio of maybe 10 to 15 times the number of atoms to have one error corrected capability at a qubit. All right. So you need to have, maybe 10 to 15 qubits to equal one error corrected qubit. So when you're talking about 1,000 qubits, you might have 10 actual qubits that can actually do computations. And you need, like I said, hundreds of thousands of those error corrected qubits to be able to do computational capability at any meaningful magnitude. So on the photonic space, you don't need to have that. They're inherently stable. So qubits are equal, one qubit's equal to a qubit. In fact, in photonics, we actually use the word QUDIT, Q-U-D-I-T, which is a measure of photonic capability that gives you even greater magnitude of computational capability than one qubit does. You can look all this stuff up on the internet. I'm not going to give you the technical description of it. At the layman's perspective, all you need to know is that we can actually solve real problems today. So for example, complex problems such as supply chain, fraud detection, sensor placement, things like this, which we've been doing, we can actually look at large problem sets, and we've done in the laboratory well over 30,000 qubits. We
Wow.
advertise commercially that we will do 10,000 qubits on a problem that, is a problem that people want to try to solve. So we're doing that today. We're working with clients, like I mentioned, that are doing supply chain analysis. They're doing fraud detection, but they're doing it on big problems with many, many variables in them that can now be done on a quantum computer. And that's really interesting, right? And that's what we're going to the market with today. We actually have contracts using that technology that allow us to solve those kind of problems today, and we're scaling that up. So, this year for us, getting into the marketplace, we talk about doing the fundamentals. We've done a lot of the research. We're always evolving. We're very innovative. So you're never done with research. But
Right.
with the things that we can do today, we're in the marketplace, we're solving problems, we're selling our technology. And that's interesting. But as you mentioned, we're not just a quantum computing company. We have adjacent technologies, photonic-based quantum computers, computing technologies that we can use for LiDAR, right? Sensing, imaging, right? We can do cybersecurity with our capability. So the photonic quantum computing capability allows us to expand our market space, not just to computing, but to these other adjacent areas, which frankly, I think we're the only company, or I'll say one of the very few companies, but I don't know of any other that are out there doing exactly what we're doing. So when we talk about de-risking this company, we have focus, number one, which you always want in a startup. You want focus, right? We are absolutely focused on quantum computing as it relates to photonics. But we have the same core capability we can bring into other areas that allow us to be able, through partnerships, we're going to develop these market areas so we'll have a broader breadth of market access than just quantum computing.
So from the revenue perspective, let's talk about some of these. Let's go into a little bit of depth into some of these verticals. You mentioned the quantum sensing. You recently signed an agreement, or you were awarded part of a contract for NASA, and that has to do with measuring snow depth or ice depth. And can you talk a little bit about that? And let's just ask the big question: why were you awarded that contract?
Yeah, so we've already demonstrated the capability using photonics, using LiDAR, to be able to do these capabilities and show this capability in the laboratory. And effectively, this is a follow-on contract from an initial grant that was awarded to Yuping Wang, our chief quantum officer, prior to our acquisition. And then subsequent to that, we were awarded this work to be able to develop a LiDAR capability that, after testing, ultimately will be placed in space on a satellite or the space station to do snow depth measurement, which has got a great environmental impact in terms of being able to do analysis for environments. But it gives the idea of being able to identify snowpack, which is germane to, water table analysis or flood analysis, things like this that have environmental impact. But we can do that from space because using photonics, and this is the difference. So I'm not a LiDAR expert, but the fundamental difference is you have some challenges with LiDAR. You can't see through certain materials. You can't see through fog. There's always obscurants that have these challenges. But with photons, you can bombard an area with photons and just get one or two back. And we've got that ability to read that photon from distance. Even if you're shooting billions of these photons, you just get one or two back. We can get an accurate reading of what we're shooting at to be able to determine what is going on. So from space, we can actually look at snow depth and determine if it's 1 feet, 10 feet, whatever it may be, and get that accurate reading with photonics, which you can't do through regular LiDAR. So that's just one example. But the same type of imaging capability, and so going back on the contract, so we have a small contract with NASA, a subcontract to do this, about $100,000 initially. And we expect that to progress as we go through the testing phases, ultimately to get on satellites where There'll be a growth curve there. I don't want to predict, but it would be a reasonable growth curve, sizable one, to show us what we can do at scale.
Well, you got
And
to
these
start from somewhere,
technologies-
right? You have to start
Sorry?
somewhere. You have
Yeah.
to start from somewhere, and the growth, I think, is clear there. And I think it's very important that you know the audience and our listeners understand that. You know, listen to what Robert just said. Started with the grant. They were able to prove that their technology works, so it's not just talk. And we've seen in industry and following some of these other quote quantum companies, we haven't been able to see, you know, any quote proof in the pudding. Here we've seen it, and now enough that NASA's entrusting them with this, you know, subcontract. So I think that shows tremendous growth from beginning, execution, and now, you know, awarded the contract. So I'm a big fan of that.
Well, if I can just interject on that, you know,
Sure,
first, so, you know, I tell people we're probably the greatest little innovation company you've never heard of, right? And I mean that sincerely. It's like,
right.
we've got some great things going on, but we purposely have stayed under the radar because we wanted to prove the things we could say. There's been so much hype in the quantum market space that people have become disillusioned with it. And I call this, we're in this trough of disillusionment, right? In the beginning, back in the you know, the 2015, 2018, 2019 timeframe, people had such high hopes for quantum computing, which they arguably should, but I think the market expected things to happen in a much compressed time frame. Quantum computing's hard, right? You know,
Sure.
go back to the IBM model. They're talking about doing 2,500 qubits maybe next year sometime, right? It's still a small number compared to where we need to be in big problems, right? Or where they need to be in big problems. So the market can't do anything with that. And I would suggest to you that people have been somewhat now, you know, disillusioned, like I said, about what the performance capabilities are. And then a company like ours comes along and says, hey, listen, we're going to turn this on its head. We tell you today we can do things that are really business relevant. We have a scalable capability. I mean, we'll talk about the roadmap here in a moment, but we want to be the everyman quantum computer, or every person quantum computer. And we want to get out there to as many companies as we can. We're not just talking about an elitist approach toward maybe the Fortune 50 companies that can afford to use quantum computing with tens of millions of dollars worth of investment. We're talking about Fortune 5,000 companies, right? Everyday businesses that want to be able to use quantum computing for a competitive advantage, that can afford to deploy this technology on premises without a bunch of physicists running around, to be able to put this technology to work, to give them the optimal benefits of this technology, because it's going to be there. It's not a question of when or if, it's a question of when. We argue today that we can do this now, and because I've got the proof, it goes back to what I said earlier. We've been under the radar because we're making big claims. And when small companies make big claims, the first thing people ask for is proof.
Sure.
And we're able to provide that proof. So there's nothing I'm talking about here which is aspirational. Everything I'm talking about is demonstrable. We have it in our lab. We're commercializing it. We're moving into the marketplace. And our investors and the quantum community in general are going to see material results from that benefit.
Well, you know, I think that's a good point. And I will say, you know, there's a saying we have in kind of the luxury good consumer market, and that is aspirational, attainable. And if we were to use that in parallel to what you're doing, it's not just aspirational, it's actually attainable.
Right.
And the fact that you can be able to provide technology in such a way that allows a medium-sized business, small-sized business, or someone that's built into their budget, that they can use this to solve problems in their industry using this type of technology, I think really truly is not just the future, but it's also game-changing. Because you're now, I mean, we've seen what now ChatGPT, when we talk about applications, right? And I think that's kind of where we're getting into with kind of the innovating and having the marketplace validation. When you look at a company, and you'd mentioned supply chain, the world just came out of a massive, COVID-19 pandemic, world was crazy. And that affected our supply chains. And today, sitting here, it's still affecting our supply chains. We're witnessing it. Rising food prices, cost of transportation, all sorts of things that are going into it. But when you can now use this type of technology to get greater insight into a large network of multiple nodes that need to be tracked and then understood,
Right.
I think that's where this quantum solutions, which is why I really like how you kind of done the branding of, it's a quantum solutions company, an innovative quantum solutions company, because when you can actually use this type of technology to solve real world problems instead of trying to solve like, oh, what's the actual n number of pi or whatever it may be, right?
Right.
Some of these like theoretical things out there. These are real things. Fraud detection affects everyday Americans, right? With credit cards, identity theft, supply chain. I was doing some research, and there was a large equipment company, and I want to get your thoughts on this. There was a large equipment company. If you travel around the U.S. Or you're driving and you see kind of like bulldozers and tractors and all sorts of stuff on the side of the road when they're doing big construction projects or cranes or whatever it may be, all around the country. So this company has equipment everywhere. Okay, they had a ransomware attack. It took them 6 months to be able to find out where all their equipment was, because when they were able to recover their data, they couldn't. They had to piece it all back together and figure out what bulldozer was here, what cement mixer was there, and it really crippled their company. So from a supply chain inventory management, I'm just thinking through all of the different real world applications, and there's tons of them. I mean, airlines, oil and gas, pipeline. I mean, it seems to me that you are creating a platform which these companies can come in and say, here's my problem. How can I solve it quicker using your technology? Would that be the correct analysis?
Well, 100%. In fact, what's really nice about the way you characterize that is you were talking about problem solving and not talking about technology. And when we can have a conversation, and I don't have to sit here and tell you I have 10,000 qubits and I can do this type of computations, and then we just talk about applying the technology to the solutions, then I know we've made a change in the marketplace. And that's what I actually see happening today, right? And, it's the glimmer of hope that I always go by, because as long as companies are going to compare themselves to each other about who's got more qubits and who can do this and who can do that, it's a very meaningless conversation to anybody in the marketplace, right?
Right.
What's meaningful in the marketplace is exactly what you said. Solve my problem. Tell me I can do that. I don't care if you use a quantum computer, a classical computer, or you're flipping a coin. Solve my problem, and I'm there, right? Because people have real problems to solve. They don't care about the technology. They just want to get a better answer. That's the point that we're at today. We're about solving those problems. We're about, yes, I have to go through the whole, hey, it's quantum computing. This is how we do it, blah, 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 right? But those conversations are becoming shorter and shorter, and people are like, okay, got all that. All I want to know is, can you do this? Well,
Right.
yeah, I can do that. That's exactly where we need to be. When we make that change in the market as a whole, people in the marketplace are making that change intellectually today, right? They're few and far between, because it's like everything. In the beginning, you always have a few early adopters and they get competitively advantaged. And then it becomes all of a sudden, wow, this is really cool. And you talked about ChatGPT. That's a great example.
Mhm.
AI has been around for decades, almost as long as I've been alive, which is not a long time. So, but the application of AI to really meaningful problems has always been sort of this realm within the elite, people that could use it, or you had to have a lot of computing power. And then all of a sudden, ChatGPT comes on the line. Using natural language processing, you ask a question, you get intelligent answers back. Not only that, but I mean, arguably, you're getting really good information back, right? It's only as good as you get, right? I mean,
Sure.
ChatGPT is not making stuff up. It's going out on the internet and checking facts and doing all this stuff and coming up with conclusions, much like a human would do, right?
Right.
It's not doing original research, from what I can understand. It's really just basing everything on existing research. So you have biases there, but regardless, it's doing what a human would do on any research, going out, collecting, analyzing, synthesizing the information, coming up with answers. It's a great marketing tool, because you know what? That technology's been around for a while. And all of a sudden people see it and they're like, wow, I could actually do something with this. Right. So it's kind of got the wave of interest. It's demonstrating from a marketing standpoint, AI is actually a useful technology. Now, arguably, it's a lot more useful than that. Right. Quantum
Right.
computing, we have to go through that same metamorphosis. We have to be able to do okay, yeah, it's really cool technology, but in the end of the day, you can do these things with it. And, right now we're doing them onesie twosies, but
Right.
at scale for us to demonstrate in a market area. So once we're solving supply chain problems, and we're doing it for specific clients that are really dedicated to using quantum computing to figure this stuff out. And then all of a sudden, the entire industry is going to get the word that they can do these things, and the market's going to blow up, right? What we're doing is going to really catch on because people think, you talk about AI and you talk about Chat GPT. There are many, many, many other AI applications. You're not talking about them. You're talking about
Right.
Chat GPT, right?
Well,
So
yeah, and I think that's the big not elephant in the room, but I think that's what people are talking about now. For anyone that's just tuning in, I'm joined with the CEO Robert Liscouski of Quantum Computing Technologies. We're always delighted to have him with us. We're going to be covering quantum computing for the next years to come. So just love sitting down and talking with Bob. If you're following, make sure you like and subscribe to all of our pages. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channels. We're growing. We're over 76,000 followers on Twitter now. We're getting extreme growth on our YouTube, where this video will be. We will re-air this stuff. But we're talking and discussing the exciting news that Quantum Computing Inc. has announced. We've been talking about the launch of their latest cybersecurity technology. We're going to talk about their patent. For unconditional network security, the developments of actual products, they're moving to revenue. So if you're tuning in a little late, start from the beginning and watch the whole segment. Really a lot of great information going on. So Bob, just kind of getting back real quick, I want to talk about the fact that you're constantly innovating, is what it seems like to me. Not just, think we're doing NASA with LIDAR and snow depth and sustainability climate monitoring, to fraud detection with Rabobank, to now this you were awarded a patent for addressing unconditional network security, which is a significant development in the world of cybersecurity, by the way. Can you shed some light on what that means for the industry and the company with regards to that patent? Because I think that is the definition of innovating right there. Is if you were awarded it, that means it doesn't exist anywhere else based on what they have. So
right.
Let's go from there.
Yeah. So and I'll be high level about it. I think I've got a cybersecurity background, and I'm dated a little bit on this stuff because I haven't. I'm not a practitioner anymore. I used to be a director of information assurance for the Coca-Cola Company, and I basically Homeland Security cybersecurity capability when we started that up in 2003. I got a pretty good understanding of the space. And, you talk about a market space, there's well over a $2 trillion market already, and arguably even higher than that in cybersecurity. Now, that's a big space, right? And you look at the areas where you can play. You've got authentication, you've got encryption, right? You've got the ability to store data at rest, store data in transit, store data in use. There's a lot of different ways to kind of cut that. And you look at what technologies can be in place. I would tell you as a practitioner that most of the cybersecurity problems today are still very basic, still very human engineered, things that people are falling prey to all the time, okay? And that's a huge pool of problems. However, there's also a subset of that pool in which you have very, very high vulnerabilities to and high risk, and then and very, very big consequences if things go wrong. So financial transactions, being able to authenticate a transaction between two people or two companies or point A to point B, authentication is a problem. Encryption is a problem. And the ability for people to be able to either intercept those communications or spoof people because they don't have good authentication is a big problem today. It really depends upon the public key infrastructure, which we know is vulnerable inherently. And if you look at the NIST standard, effectively, one of the things that NIST and NSA, National Security Agency, have already, pretty much said is you can't rely on public key infrastructure for it because of the vulnerabilities that are inherent with that. So you need other mechanisms by which you can do that. And we have, using our photonic capability, and this patent proves this, we have the ability to have secure communications, secure authentication, and using entanglement to be able to do this, using quantum capabilities without any public key, without any key capability that authenticate between two people or two entities to ensure that the right people are communicating, and you can do it securely. That's what we have. And that patent is a tremendous ability for us. And we're just getting into the marketplace with that. We're working with partners, looking for partners to help us do this. Some of the big problem areas, like I mentioned, are financial transactions, number one. Number two, an area that, when I was the responsible person for infrastructure protection for the United States, you look at industrial control systems and SCADA control systems as being one of the key areas of vulnerability for any type of attack, a cyber attack by our adversaries, for ransomware. You talked about the ransomware attack. All those things have a tendency of coming together. We actually have an addressable solution, scalable solution for problems like that. It's a tremendous market opportunity for this company.
Well, and I think that kind of leads into my my last and final question here in closing. It seems to me that you're positioned to be the leader in this space. And I want you to just talk very briefly, your quick 30-second spiel or pitch on that. Tell me about QUBT, leader in the space. Where do you see it from your lens?
Yeah, so the great thing about it is we innovate, and we've got a great team of innovators. We're looking at photonics as a way that we can solve a lot of these big problems, and the only way you can lead is through innovation. And I think that's going to be the thing that the market's going to be most sensitive to, what we can do, the types of problems we can solve, the things we can bring into the market very quickly that can scale, and the scaling aspect is important. So if anybody is new to the company, they haven't followed us, they'll see that we're relatively small. The question you have is, how can you address such a big market with the size company you are? And we do it through partnerships. For us, it's going to be through strategic partnerships, looking at folks who are already established in these areas that want to innovate themselves. They look to companies like us to help that innovation, and there are presence in the marketplace. That's exactly how we plan on doing that.
Well, Robert, thank you so much for joining us today on the Market Hunters platform. We look forward to doing more in-depth conversations like these where we can really drive down on certain industries and talk about these various innovations, because as you continue to innovate, we're going to continue to follow those innovations, which I think is critical. So, Robert, thank you so much for joining us. For anyone that is interested in following more about the company, we've put their stock symbol down, QUBT. All the links will be in the bottom of this video once it's posted and it restreams, so you'll be able to follow there. Also follow our Twitter, where we will be tagging them, and follow us on LinkedIn, where we write the in-depth articles, featuring the different things that the companies are doing. So, Robert, thank you again for joining us today.
Great, thanks, Hunter. There's a lot more to talk about. We haven't even touched on our AI capabilities. But I know we're going to be doing this again, and I look forward to getting into depth on that.
Very much looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Bob. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So that was another episode of Market Hunters. We really appreciate you joining, and make sure you like, subscribe, and share this out to everyone else that's out there. So if you liked anything that you heard today, or you feel that people should be listening into this and you should be creating market awareness, this is how we take these companies from where they're at, and we expand the message, because this innovation is only going to help us all. And I truly believe that. So make sure you like, follow, and subscribe. Thank you so much. And we will see you next time right here on Market Hunters Live.